If anyone had asked me to describe my life with Mark in one word, it would have been blissful. That kind of bliss that is so pure and simple, you almost take it for granted, like clean air or a sunny day. We met during our college years and something just clicked. I remember our first date vividly. Dinner at a cozy Italian restaurant, where the dim lighting and soft jazz in the background made the evening feel magical. "You look beautiful, Ella," Mark had said as he pulled out the chair for me. I blushed. "Thank you, Mark. You're quite the charmer yourself." We talked effortlessly, our conversation weaving through topics as diverse as politics, art, and even our favorite types of cheese. It was the start of something special, something that, at the time, seemed unbreakable. Our wedding was equally as dreamy. I wore a flowing white gown that made me feel like a princess, while Mark looked dapper in his tailored suit. We exchanged vows under a canopy of twinkling fairy lights, surrounded by friends and family who couldn't help but share in our infectious happiness. "Do you, Ella, take Mark to be your lawfully wedded husband?" the minister asked, his voice tinged with joyous solemnity. "I do," I said, the words carrying the weight of a promise I never thought I would break. "And do you, Mark, take Ella to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," Mark replied, his eyes locking onto mine as if nothing else in the world mattered. From that moment, I thought we were invincible. Our honeymoon in Greece was a fortnight of romance and adventure. We explored ancient ruins, dined in quaint little restaurants, and watched sunsets that seemed to go on forever. "It feels like time stands still when I'm with you," I told Mark one evening as we sat overlooking the Aegean Sea, the sky awash in hues of pink and orange. "It's a forever kind of love, Ella." "Ella, I feel it deep down," Mark had responded, his arm around me, pulling me closer. Life post-honeymoon maintained the same enchanted quality. We were that couple, always holding hands, stealing kisses, and talking into the wee hours of the night. Our arguments were few and far between, usually trivial things that were forgotten as quickly as they had flared up. A forgotten anniversary by Mark was remedied by a surprise date night. A careless comment from me was forgiven after a heartfelt apology. "Hey, we're only human, right? What matters is we love each other," Mark would often say, his words a soothing balm on whatever tiny rift had momentarily come between us. We moved in together, sharing a charming little apartment that was a testament to our combined tastes. A blend of vintage charm and modern simplicity. It wasn't just a house. It was a home, a sanctuary built on a foundation of trust and love. Or so I believed. We both had fulfilling careers. Mark was a financial analyst, known for his shrewd investment skills, while I was a nurse, caring for people, which gave me a sense of purpose. Our love was the glue that held everything together. "Life is perfect, isn't it?" Mark would often say as we sat on our balcony, sipping on wine and watching the world go by. "Yes, it is," I would agree, my head on his shoulder, lulled into a comforting sense of everlasting happiness. Little did I know that this fairy tale would soon turn into a nightmare, that the man I thought was my soulmate would become a stranger, and that my life would be flipped upside down in the most shocking way imaginable. Mark and I had always talked about buying an apartment, a space we could call our own and perhaps raise a family in. After years of saving, the moment arrived. We must have looked at dozens of places, each with its unique charm, but not quite it. And then we found the one, an elegant, modern apartment with large windows that let in floods of natural light. It had a spacious kitchen where I could see us cooking meals together, a cozy living room that screamed family movie nights, and a balcony with a view that took our breath away. Wow! Ella, can you imagine waking up to this view every morning?" Mark said, almost in a whisper, as we stood on the balcony during our first visit, looking out at the sprawling cityscape. "I can, Mark, and it looks like a dream," I replied, already envisioning morning coffees and evening wines, enjoyed right here. So we took the plunge. The process was exhausting. Paperwork, loans, and endless planning. But eventually, the keys were handed over, and the apartment was ours. Mark's financial prowess had made it possible for us to buy it outright, leaving us with $300,000 in savings. Mark had a particular idea for that money. He suggested we keep it in cash as an emergency fund in a room we designate as the secret room. The room was a small space, originally intended as a home office, tucked away behind the living room. What do you think? Should we turn this into our safe room? You know, keep the money, important papers, that sort of thing, Mark mused as he inspected the empty room. It sounds like a good idea, I said. A safety net is never a bad thing. And so, the secret room came into being. We placed the $300,000 in a safe, disguising it behind a bookshelf. It was our little fortress, filled with not just money, but also dreams, hopes, and a sense of security. Then came my moment of initiative, or perhaps indiscretion in hindsight. My nursing instincts always veer towards caution, so I installed the art video cameras in the room. The cameras were discreet, hidden in such a way that you'd only notice them if you knew where to look. I took it upon myself to set it up, thinking Mark would appreciate the extra level of security. In case of burglars or something, you know, I thought to myself as I completed the installation. I should tell Mark. The thought did flash through my mind, but the whirlwind of daily life, work, grocery shopping, social commitments, took over, and I forgot. It slipped my mind entirely. I mean, why would it be an issue? We were a team, Mark and I, partners in crime and in life. And what are teams but collections of people who have each other's backs, right? Or at least, that's what I naively believed. Little did I know that this secret room, a symbol of our safety and unity, would soon become the battleground for a shocking betrayal. In the whirlpool of daily chores and work, the camera detail evaporated from my mind like a trivial scribble erased from a chalkboard. After all, we were so caught up in our love, our careers, and our new apartment, the thought that this room, this safe space, would become a Pandora's box of hurt, accusations, and legal complications never even brushed my wildest nightmares. And so, the stage was set for an upheaval that would shake the very foundations of what I had believed to be an unbreakable bond. I remember that morning vividly. I was enjoying my first cup of coffee, the aroma mingling with the morning sunlight that streamed through our large windows. I was scrolling through my phone, looking at news updates, when I heard a noise from the direction of the secret room. It was a rumbling, a storm brewing. The door burst open, and Mark stormed out. His face was a tempest of emotions. Anger, betrayal, disgust. In his hands, he clutched bundles of cash. Our cash. His knuckles were white, his grip ironclad as if the money would fly away if he let go. He tossed the cash onto the kitchen island, his eyes ablaze. "Ella, you thief! You thought you could steal from me!" Mark spat the words, each one laced with a venom I had never heard before. "What? What are you talking about, Mark?" I was stunned, disoriented. My brain struggled to catch up, to understand what was unfolding. "Don't play innocent. You stole our money, didn't you? It's not where it should be in the safe." His voice was a cauldron of accusation and loathing. "But I haven't touched it. Why would I? Save your lies, Ella. I've already called the police. You're done." As he said this, I heard the distant wail of sirens. They were getting closer. My heart raced as the grim realization set in. Within moments, our apartment, our sanctuary, was invaded by uniformed police officers. They moved quickly, professionally, but their presence felt like a violation. Mark pointed at the money, then at me, his face contorted in a sneer. "Officers? That's her. That's the woman who stole my money," Mark said. His words etched with a finality that made my stomach churn. "Mrs. Ella, you're under arrest for theft," one of the officers said as he pulled out a pair of handcuffs. I felt the cold steel wrap around my wrists, a stark contrast to the warmth of my wedding band. "Mark, why are you doing this? This is insane." I managed to utter, still incredulous that the man who had once vowed to be my partner in life was now orchestrating my downfall. "You should have thought about that before you betrayed me," he said, his eyes devoid of any emotion I could recognize. As they led me out, I caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror. My reflection looked distorted, as though I couldn't recognize the woman staring back at me. Could Mark not recognize me either? Was that why this was happening? But there was no time to ponder these questions. The drive to the police station was a blur, each passing moment a slide deeper into an abyss. I was numbed, still unable to fathom how a day that began so ordinarily could spiral into an unimaginable nightmare. My mind was a jumble of confusion, fear, and betrayal. But underneath it all was a glimmer of hope, because I remembered the cameras. And in that fleeting moment, I realized that while my sky had indeed fallen, I might have the tools to piece it back together. The police station was a world apart from the life I had known. Cold, sterile, unfeeling, every square inch of it seemed designed to break your spirit. I was led into an interrogation room, its starkness underscored by the glaring overhead light. It felt surreal, like a scene from a gritty crime drama, except I was the accused, and this was terrifyingly real. A detective whose name tag read Smith sat down across the table. He had a weathered face, a man who'd seen it all but had room for a little more cynicism. "All right, Ella," he began, flipping open a folder that seemed to contain the details of my now unraveling life. "Your husband claims you stole a significant amount of money from him. What do you have to say about that?" "I didn't steal anything," I replied, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. "You expect us to believe that? Your own husband turned you in." "My own husband is lying," I said, my eyes locking onto Detective Smith's, "and I can prove it." "Oh, really?" He leaned back, skepticism etched on his face. "And how do you plan to do that?" I took a deep breath. This was my moment. There are cameras in the room where the money was kept. If you check the footage, you'll see that I didn't take anything. Detective Smith paused, his eyes narrowing as he considered my words. "Cameras, you say?" "Yes, I installed them for security reasons. Please check them, and you'll see I'm telling the truth." "Installing surveillance cameras without your husband's knowledge seems suspicious, don't you think?" I intended to tell him, but forgot, I admitted, my voice tinged with regret. It slipped my mind, but the cameras are there for our security, not for any malicious intent. He scribbled something in his notes, then looked up. "Okay, we'll need to obtain a warrant to access this footage, but if what you say is true, it could significantly impact your case." I felt a sense of relief wash over me. The cameras were my lifeboat, the one shred of evidence that could rescue me from this nightmare. The detective left the room, and I was alone again. But now the room felt a bit less cold, the walls less suffocating. I began to replay the years of my life spent with Mark, each moment now suspect. How had we come to this? What masks had we been wearing? Or was the man who pledged to spend his life with me a mirage, as fleeting and unreal as a desert oasis? As I pondered these questions, I found my thoughts drifting back to the apartment. Our apartment. In my mind's eye, I saw the secret room, once a symbol of our dreams and security, now a vault of deceit and betrayal. It was as if our entire relationship had been distilled into that tiny space, its every corner revealing a little more of the painful truth. Hours passed, each tick of the clock echoing in the empty room, each minute stretching longer than the last. Finally, Detective Smith returned, a mix of incredulity and grudging respect in his eyes. "We've seen the footage," he said, folding his arms. While far from a declaration of victory, those words felt like the first rays of sunlight breaking through the clouds. I hadn't misremembered or imagined installing those cameras. They were real, and they might just be the key to reclaiming my life and my truth, even if that truth was now stained with betrayal. The courtroom was buzzing when I walked in, the tension palpable. The gallery was filled with spectators, their eyes darting between Mark and me. Whispered speculations filled the air, forming a dissonant background score to what was already an emotionally charged setting. I took my seat, my lawyer by my side. I glanced toward Mark. Our eyes met for a split second, and in that moment, I saw nothing that reminded me of the man I had once loved. "Order in the court," the judge commanded, silencing the whispers. "We are here to examine the charges of theft brought against Ella by her husband. Mark, prosecution, you may begin." Mark's attorney, a middle-aged man with a reputation for courtroom theatrics, stood up. "Your Honor, we are here today to bring justice to a man who has been betrayed in the most intimate setting possible, his own home." He laid out Mark's case, painting me as the villain, complete with citations of our financial struggles and the supposed motive I had for stealing the money. It was a convincing narrative, built on half-truths and twisted facts. I felt the weight of the courtroom's gaze heavy on me, judging, condemning. Finally, it was my lawyer's turn. "Your Honor, we are confident that the evidence will show that Ella is innocent. In fact, she's the victim here, accused based on nothing more than the say-so of her husband." My heart was pounding as my lawyer signaled for the video footage to be played. The room went silent as the screen lit up, showing the interior of our secret room, the safe in plain view. Seconds turned into minutes. People shifted in their seats, some coughed, but the tension held them in check. And then it happened. The timestamp on the video showed the date and time when the money was supposed to have been stolen. And there I was, entering the room but leaving the safe untouched. The courtroom erupted into murmurs, the spectators in disbelief. "What is the meaning of this?" the judge asked, directing the question at Mark's attorney. Before he could answer, my lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, this footage proves that Ella did not steal the money. If anything, we should be questioning why Mark made such a severe accusation without any evidence." All eyes turned to Mark, whose face had gone pale, his composure finally cracking. The judge ordered him to take the stand. "Is this your secret room? The place from where you claim your wife stole the money?" my lawyer asked Mark, locking eyes with him. "Yes, it is," Mark replied, his voice shaky. "And you accused your wife based on what evidence?" I knew the money was missing," he stammered. "I thought she was the only one who could have taken it." "But you were wrong, weren't you?" "Yes," he said, almost in a whisper, the weight of his betrayal settling in. "Your Honor," my lawyer turned towards the judge, "we not only request that the charges against Ella be dropped, but also move to file charges against Mark for defamation and false accusations." The judge nodded, a stern look on her face. "Based on the evidence provided, the court finds Ella not guilty of the charges brought against her. Furthermore, the court will allow for charges of defamation to be filed against Mark." I felt a rush of relief flood through me, washing away months of uncertainty, anxiety, and betrayal. Mark was led away, his face a mask of defeat, his eyes avoiding mine. And why would he look at me? He had tried to destroy me, to tear apart the life we had built together based on lies and unfounded suspicions. But as I walked out of the courtroom, the future spread before me like an unwritten book. I knew one thing. Mark had not destroyed me. He had fortified me. The experience had exposed not just his betrayals, but my strengths. And as I stepped out into the sunlight, for the first time in a long time, the world didn't seem like a labyrinth of deceits and hidden traps, but a stage for new beginnings. As the courtroom doors closed behind me, the reality of my newfound freedom began to sink in. It felt surreal, like waking up from a protracted nightmare. My friends and family who had supported me through the ordeal enveloped me in a group hug right outside the courtroom. "You did it, Ella!" my sister said, her eyes brimming with tears. "You stood your ground and you did it!" "I had to," I replied, hugging her tightly. "I had to not just for myself, but for every person who's been falsely accused and didn't have the means to fight back." My phone buzzed with notifications, texts, calls, even some media inquiries. Word had gotten out about the dramatic turn of events, the courtroom showdown that had upended expectations. But among the deluge of notifications, one caught my eye. The divorce papers had been finalized. Mark and I were officially over. Our marriage, nothing more than a page in the annals of my past. In the days that followed, I took it upon myself to reclaim my life. The apartment, once a sanctuary for two, now felt oversized and empty. I sold it, splitting the proceeds as stipulated in the divorce settlement. And the money, the supposed theft of which had set off this entire chain of events, was donated to a non-profit organization for the falsely accused. I could think of no better use for it. And then there was the matter of the $100,000 in moral compensation I had received. I invested it into a small startup focused on creating advanced home security systems. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I felt empowered turning a tool of my vindication into a venture that could potentially protect others. As for Mark, he served his time. I heard through the grapevine that his days in jail were difficult. The shame of his actions had caught up to him, alienating even his staunchest supporters. Once out, he tried to reach out to me, not in person, but through a mutual contact. "Ella, he wants to talk," the contact said, his voice hesitant during the phone call. "Mark said he's got something important to say to you." "I don't think there's anything left to talk about," I responded flatly, cutting off any potential for a continued dialogue. "That was the last I heard of him. It's funny, in the twisted labyrinth of life, you sometimes find yourself at crossroads you never expected." Our paths had diverged so dramatically that the life I once shared with Mark felt like a dream, an old, faded, discolored photograph that bore no resemblance to my vibrant